I probably need to give you a little background first, though, because this was a part of a much bigger unit, a Holocaust unit that we've used, we've been a part of now for probably well over a month, maybe even 2 months. And the way this began was we started with some nonfiction pieces, hoping that later on we would then blend those with the fiction pieces, a couple of novels that we'll mention here shortly. But we started off with some, you want to go ahead and do that? Started off with a couple of things. I think we'll show them the first one there. This one was a piece that allowed students to kind of get a feel for what the Holocaust was about. We found that most 7th graders didn't know much about World War II times. That hadn't come up in their studies yet. And because of that, we took a look at this nonfiction piece. It talks about the target groups that the Nazis targeted during the World War II era.
This wasn't just Jewish people, but there were a lot of other victims involved with it. And that's what we wanted to show them, to give them a good basis as to what we are going to be reading about, okay?
So the first couple of pieces were general, and we try to give the kids a little bit of a background about the story of the Holocaust. Then we moved on to a couple of speeches. And these speeches, the goal there was to hear from a couple of professionals who spoke, I think in both cases at the Holocaust Memorial site in Washington, D.C. And the first one was a piece that mostly talked about, it was a man who kind of repeated never again, never forget, and kind of the common theme of when you study the Holocaust at this point. But another one then was more in depth in terms of allowing the students to see, it was a liberation speech. It was celebrating the 60th anniversary of liberation. And in that one, they actually got a lot more detail, and they got in and really got to see what the soldiers and people were reporting that they saw when they set out to liberate these camps. And so that's what those two were. The idea behind that too was to, we started with graphic organizers and brought the ideas of those two together, and then that led to a written piece. Mr. Carr likes to say that we write to prove we think, and so that was the evidence of that.
Can I add one thing to
Absolutely.
Real quick? You know, they talked about the background, the basis of the Holocaust and so on, but at the same hand, I know you're all familiar, but Common Core talks about how we're supposed to have the students understand how authors of fiction use or alter history at the same hand. So without that understanding, our novels, you know, they don't have the same depth of understanding. So they have to have that historic background to then read the fiction pieces he's going to talk about in order to see, again, what elements they play with, extend, and alter as well.
We also looked at like the poetry of that was written from the Holocaust, about the Holocaust, actual people who experienced it and what they came out of, what their thoughts were, and we had them compare some pieces of poetry of that era and kind of fit it into, okay, they said this in the poetry, and we read about things here.
The last thing here, you'll see that we read the novel Boy in the Striped Pajamas. That was actually the second novel we read. The first one we read was the Devil's Arithmetic. And along with that, we showed the movie. At that time, we were able to do some connections between the video footage versus the book, and we tried to make those comparisons, as is one of the standards. We showed him that this Rabbi Bleck was speaking out against this book. He gave it some credit at the beginning of his persuasive argument here. This was a persuasive piece that we looked at. But basically by the end, he was saying this is a book that I would not encourage students to read. He was basing that on the fact that he didn't want that to be their only piece. He didn't want that to be the only piece they saw of the Holocaust, because it didn't, in his opinion, get deep enough and show the truth behind what all took place. And so we had the opportunity then to talk with the kids a little bit about, should we even read this book, and what are we really seeking to get out of this? All right.
Can I answer that? John Boyne, the author, talks about anyone who takes on this ambitious task of teaching young people about the Holocaust, never make generalizations. At the same hand, to what degree are we able to convey to them the emotional truth? And the book itself, if you're familiar, and I'm sure most of you are, seen the film itself, but it doesn't reach that goal, but yet it does. It depends on how deep their understanding is in the nonfiction, how he does reach that emotional truth. And a lot of this project that we're going to talk about here in a little bit asks the kids to look at both the objectivity, subjectivity of what it is that they've been studying. So the emotional truth does come out, but that became our essential question over the entire unit. So what degree can we in this world, in our safe environments 2013, even begin to understand the experiences of the Holocaust itself and what these people went through. So.
All right, so that's a little background.